What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, the Mamba year. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside Crunch Time himself, Hollywood, Jeff Iafrady. Jeff got that beautiful caressing Troy Weaver look right behind you, looking off into the
Big
distance.
week for him.
Yep. It is a very big week for him. And it is a very big year for you, my friend. It's good to see you. Congratulations on all the success of late.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. I'm happy to be here. Yep, Crunch Time, we got that started. You could follow it at official CT on all social media, YouTube as well. We do all Lions, everything. Actually, we're having you on, Sean, this week. Talk deadlines.
Yes, sir.
For that. But I'm happy to be here. I missed you, Troy, Sean. Let's get started, man. I'm fired up. Get some Pistons takes out.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome. And also joining us is the Marquette Heat. Joining us from that seat, Mr. Indiana himself, Troy Sergey. Troy, what's going on? What games have you been to lately? Have you been to ones that you haven't told me about? And do you have any games up on the docket? Also, we should talk after this pod and plan a game within the next couple of months for me to come down and watch together. That's a whole other conversation. Original question. You know what I'm asking.
So original question. How am I doing? I'm doing good, Sean.
Yep.
Christmas is in a couple days. That is it's a trade deadline, of course. And to answer your question briefly, no, I went to my last game was the Kevin Durant, Devin Booker game a couple of weeks ago, which was awesome.
Man.
Really fun to see. I never saw KD in person, so
was it $13 or what was that?
A little more. I think that one was closer to 25, but still worth it. Still worth it. Yeah.
I mean, hey, that's primo pricing for the Pacers. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's
like
right.
10 more bucks. You might have gotten into a suite.
That's right. Tomorrow, going to see Jalen Green and Segun and the Rockets. So, but with that too, Sean, just quick, I went on SeatGeek for the Grizzlies the other day just to see what they were doing with, just with all their injuries. Their games are almost all $1 or $2. So they got the Pacers. Those folks in Memphis, shout out to them because they get some very cheap basketball. I thought I got cheap basketball, and I do, but Grizzlies have it a little bit easier.
This is why I got to move closer to a city, man, because I could be literally paying for NBA games like it's a Taco Bell meal. But I digress. This is From Half Court. Each and every week, we talk all things Detroit Pistons, all things NBA basketball. We hear about Troy's ridiculously priced tickets, and we also get to talk to that beautiful bastard, Jeff Iafrady. If you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that mother notification bell so you don't miss any of the content we have coming here. But also, be sure you follow my guys on social media so you don't miss what they have going on as well. Jeff, you can find him on Crunch Time with Jeff Iafrady and Booner on YouTube, but also at Jeff Iafrady on X. You can also find Troy on X at Troy Sergey 44, and you can also find myself on
X.
There you go, at Sean Half Court. But with that, guys, Troy, you alluded to it a second ago. As of recording, we are just a couple of days away from what is the NBA equivalent to Christmas, which is the NBA trade deadline. And listen, this has been a pretty anticipated date, for the Pistons in particular, because since about December, when Detroit went on that, historic losing streak that we all know about, the 28-game slide of hell where, they got beat by just about every team in the league. They were, like Tom Gores talked about how change was coming, and he expects to see change, and he expects to, to see improvements to the roster. And he said pretty publicly, if there wasn't change, if there weren't improvements, he would be disappointed. Right now, obviously, as we've gotten more intel, we've learned more information over time, and we've been able to gather kind of more where the organization is at, how they view their current roster, and like what moves you can realistically expect. And it seems like as of right now, it doesn't look like a big name move is happening at the deadline. And we can have debates of whether or not there should be, but in my opinion, it's pretty hard to to say a 6-win team should be mortgaging future assets to go and win now when there's not a prize you're competing for the rest of this season. I also understand the argument because, reportedly Detroit is, wanting to hold on to their core four of, and on top of that, they also, seemingly want to keep Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic. I understand the argument of people saying, you have as many players on the team that you want to keep as you have wins this season. Why are there so many untouchable players? But, I would say, like Jeff, Troy, you asked just about like the majority of the fan base. You say, hey, do you want to trade Ivy, Cade, Asar, or Duran? I would say 90% of the fan base would say no. So when you leave the only players that you really have left to trade are veterans who can shoot the basketball and defend competently, which is exactly what this team needs. They're in a difficult position to make any moves before Thursday. But having said that, Jeff, what do you expect to the Pistons to do? Are you anticipating a quiet week? Do you think at least something will happen? Because reports, suggest, there could be one guy, perhaps, a French player that might not be on this team this time next week.
Yeah, who would have thought the biggest news of the week would be Killian Hayes asking for a trade? That's been some big news here in Detroit. But no, I think it'll be a relatively quiet trade deadline, depending on how you look at it. I think they'll make a move, but it's not the move, if that makes sense. It's not a move that I think Pistons fans would expect, or at least a big enough move to where most of the fan base would be bought completely back in. The thing they're missing isn't young, interesting players. Like young star talent, guys that I think can be stars, that have potential. It's assets. It's draft capital. Like you go throughout and look at let's look at the last 5 years and look at guys that have been traded. We'll bring up the one that we've poked a lot of fun at. Even a guy like Rudy Gobert, he went for 4 first-round picks. Kevin Durant went for 5 first-round picks.
5 and I believe 1 or 2 pick swaps.
And even go through a guy like Kevin Durant, 4 first-round picks. Russell Westbrook was traded for first-round picks. There's Donovan Mitchell was multiple first-round picks. The Pistons are in a position where you have to bank, and maybe Pistons fans are confident, maybe Troy Weaver's confident in this. You have to bank on Ivy, Asar, Duran consistently next year taking the next step, those guys being stars, because there is no stars that are going to come here, number one, in free agency, but number two, through trades, because you don't have the draft capital. So, yeah, could they go out and get Tobias Harris? Yeah, and I think that would be an upgrade. But it's definitely not the player that I think people had in mind, especially coming off the Zach LaVine injury, or excuse me, the surgery that people kind of had in their mind that Zach LaVine was going to come to Detroit. I think that is part of me is a blessing in disguise. That's my opinion. But no, I think besides like a Tobias Harris deal, I think it'll be relatively quiet.
And I know this might sound ridiculous to casual NBA viewers, but I would legitimately say Tobias Harris is a better basketball player than Zach LaVine. Would we all agree with that on this podcast? Is that controversial? Is that like a controversial thing to say? Like, yes, Zach LaVine, perhaps at his peak of his powers, was definitively a better player, because there were at points where it was like, okay, Chicago needs to build it around Zach LaVine. He was a special athlete, could score the ball like no other. We all saw him drop 50 in October. But today, I think it's fair to say today Tobias Harris is a better player than Zach LaVine. It fits and especially fits what Detroit's trying to do better.
That's what I would agree with. He's a way better fit. Way better fit. He's still he's a good 3-point shooter. He's a wing, which they need. Yep. And he's not a guy that I think, like, if you were to bring in a guy like Zach LaVine, there's leadership qualities that you question. He's not great defensively. His availability, at least this season, you're seeing it's a problem. So not as cost effective. Like Zach LaVine's tied up for a contract. His last year he has a player option, which is like $40+ million. It just makes more sense to get a Tobias Harris, in my opinion.
Yep.
It makes more sense.
And his basketball IQ, I would say, is just better too, Tobias Harris. Offensively and defensively, he knows how to win basketball games. I know the Sixers haven't had the success they've wanted to, but at least he's played in some good playoff runs. He's been at times that third or fourth offensive option on that team consistently. And again, on the defensive end, that's a big thing that this team has struggled with this season. And I think obviously he plays a lot better than LaVine. LaVine maybe may be the better athlete, but Tobias is just more smarter on that end of the court. Therefore, I would want him. And like you mentioned, Jeff, that leadership qualities. We need someone of his age and his basketball experience on this roster, I think. So
yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at the the landscape, like with a guy like Tobias Harris, I know it would be thrilling to be able to see Detroit go out and try and get him now. But on the other hand, he is going to be a free agent later this summer, and for all intents and purposes, Detroit's going to be one of the teams in the lead position to sign him, because even though Detroit isn't going to attract the majority of free agents, he does have ties to the city of Detroit. It is a place that he loved playing at. He does have relationships with people within the front office and the organization, still from his time here. But on top of that, you just look at, like the other teams that are going to have cap space, they don't have those pre-existing relationships. They don't have like that basketball fit. And I think ultimately Detroit's going to be the team that's going to be willing to pay him the most. And I think that's probably what it's going to come down to. And so, yeah. And I think as of right now, it's like, why would you give up, a significant player and have that risk when, best case scenario gets you to 20 wins this season? So, yeah, like ultimately it just doesn't make sense. But I mean, I think just because they might not go and get a marquee player or a guy that's going to be truly franchise altering for years to come, doesn't mean they can't make moves that can make them better right now and help our young players develop in the long term. Like, for example, I feel like Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari have actually been pretty good. And ever since they've been acquired, this Pistons team's been a lot better, especially with Monte Morris back in the lineup.
Yeah, we know Monty, he works better with vets. I mean, that's a fact. Everyone knows that. So you're right, Sean. I agree with you. I think that the addition of Muscala and Gallinari, although the wins haven't been there, they've looked better with those guys on the floor. So it kind of speaks to how bad they need not only veterans, but guys that fit with what this roster is looking for: shooting, spacing. And that's why I think you don't want this team, specifically Troy and Arntellum and Ed Stefanski, I might add, but you don't want those guys to feel like your back's against the wall. So you make a deal to fix the fan base and fix the frustration, fix the now to have to suffer later. Like I think if you were to acquire a guy like Zach LaVine, that's a move that a lot of fans would be like, cool, they're doing something. You get a guy like Zach LaVine. And we've seen a move like this in the past with Blake Griffin, but the difference is Blake had other qualities that I think people forgot about, right? Like leadership. There'd be games where he'd end with 14 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. They'd win, and you wouldn't hear peep out of Blake. He'd be cool. Like it wasn't a me thing with Blake. It was a we thing. And not only, yes, do you want them to make a great move? Yes, but you also want the right fit, the right players. And that's why it's hard, because you're handcuffed, because who do you get that fits that? And again, like I went through earlier with the players that were traded, you don't have the draft capital. So will Pistons fans be frustrated? Yes, they're going to be frustrated regardless. But I do think if you get a guy like Tobias Harris, it softens the blow a little bit. The team improves, which is, I mean, that's kind of all you can ask for at this point. You have 6 wins through February. Nothing's going to immediately make this team significantly better. But if you're trying to improve, it's all you can do right now. That's all.
Yep. It's tough because they're in a position where they need to get better now, yet the solution is for them to continue to play the long game, which I know it's not what fans want to hear. I know it's not like what, is going to feel satisfying, especially with, like this type of season. But I think we can now definitively say like the next 12 months, like from this point are going to be the defining months of this front office, because, obviously they went and they made their swing and they got their coach. We've seen, how that's gone so far, but obviously with, the roster that was inherited, the health issues, the litany of things that have gone on. If Tom Gores is going to say that we're going to give Monty a pass for this year, I think it's fair, for us to essentially say, okay, well, he's getting a pass. That, it is what it is. He's not getting blamed for that. But if this time next year, they're still a bottom 3 team in the East, they're still, like not in the 6th or 7th or even like 9th or 10th slot in the Eastern Conference, I think that is a time for concern. I think that is the conversation for those bigger picture moves. And I believe that they have been having those difficult conversations of, are we doing things right? Do we have the right people? Are we having the right conversations? But in the same light, it's like, ultimately there's been a lot of talk, but like the plan and the days where they talked about where they're going to have all the flexibility and the room to do what they want to do, that's about 4 months away now.
Mhm.
So like for all intents and purposes, it's put up time. What are your thoughts, Troy?
Well, yeah, there's a lot there to unravel. I think what you said about Monty was fair, just because we know what kind of coach he is, and I think what we saw in Phoenix, was what, of course, what we were hoping for this year, turning it around. But yeah, a
And
second
that's
year
for
with
Troy in the front office too, as well. That's not just a Monty specific thing, just to clarify.
Right. I was going to get there, but yeah. But now with the front office too, it's hard. It's just so hard to make a judgment as a fan because of the win and loss column, and I just don't know how qualified we are, but I know how frustrated we are. But I know that Troy Weaver, when he is on his own, he has produced good draft capital. He has, developed players well, and even look at his record with OKC. So I still trust these guys, right? I mean, I just
Yep.
because of what we know they're capable of doing. Um, but yeah, a year from now, if it's in a similar spot, like you said, of course there's going to be questions. I would even say, towards the start of the season next year, if we don't feel as confident as fans that a roster can compete, I feel like that might be some concerns that you had all off season. You could have had some of these free agents. You could have made a couple of potentially maybe even risky trades, but trades that would have got you better. Was still keeping your core. So there's just so many scenarios that could happen between now and this time next year, even
Yep.
now and the first game of the season in October 2024, that it's so hard to make a judgment because we have no idea what this roster is going to look like between now and then. But at the end of the day, Sean, I still trust these guys, but my patience, as you mentioned, every day, maybe a tiny bit, just a little bit more pessimistic, but at the same time, I still have optimism. It's such a weird balance. It's a weird balance.
Well,
No, I totally understand.
And I want to say this too. It's almost symbolic that the last week you've been seeing Russell Westbrook, Donovan Mitchell come out and praise Jaden Ivey because Troy knows this better than anybody. I mean, it's different because you didn't have a Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. Well, we know what happened with James Harden and OKC, right? You're trading a guy too early, or you're letting a guy walk too early. That's also something that, and it's one of the hardest jobs right now because you're in a position where you want to immediately upgrade. You're thinking in your head, well, if I'm going to trade away one of these guys to go get somebody, it's going to have to be an Ivy. It's going to have to be one of these young players. But you also don't want to trade away an Ivy, and then he blossoms into a superstar. And then you acquire a star where you're unhappy or he eventually departs, and now you're stuck with nothing. Rather than homegrown talent, now the NBA incentivizes guys to stay with their teams they're drafted with because of the bag they can get. So it is a tough ask. Like that's why, it is important that these guys continue to get better because ultimately where the Pistons go in the future depends on the young core they currently have in their development.
And listen, I think if there's been any reason to have that firm belief of not trading those young pieces yet or any of those four core yet, because again, they're all like pretty much 22 and younger. But
Right.
you look at Jaden Ivey, this is since January 1st. So 17 game sample size. He's averaged 18 points. He's shot 47% from the field, 36% from three. He's averaged 4.5 assists. He's averaged 4.4 rebounds, just under 3 turnovers.
That's
Like,
exactly what we need out of him. Exactly what we need out of him.
like he's been awesome. And he's been much more involved in the action. He's had the ball in his hands. He's been, in particular, he's been phenomenal against some of the best in the league. Like you bring up like Russell Westbrook, like he put up 28 points against the Clippers. Like he's been and it's been like great performances like all season long. But on top of that, the thing that's really promising is how he's looked with Cade over the last couple of weeks as well, getting back in the lineup as both of them have had more opportunities to run the offense. It just shows you exactly like what the potential is of that backcourt.
Yeah, and I still have a lot of confidence in it. What they're, I
Mhm.
mean, you see the changes in with this offense and Ivy having the ball more, him bringing up the ball, Cade playing off ball. You see the difference. I'm not saying that I'm not even inferring that Cade can't run the offense, but you see the difference how explosive Ivy is when he is running point.
Oh my gosh.
Like he opens up so much for others. That's why it is like you got two incredible playmakers. Obviously, they play at different paces. Cade a little more slower, Ivy a little more faster. But the difference is they just need more shooters. They need capable shooters on the wing. And that's why I think going back to the Tobias Harris point, I think he helps definitely because he's a vet and he can shoot the ball and he can defend a little bit. But you see Ivy's playmaking. Like it's incredible. He had that fast break dunk against the Cavs where he just took off. He was gone. It was like lightning. It was like a lightning flash. And that's Ivy. And he has so much potential. And I know I say this a lot, and I know Monty's been hard on him. I know people criticize Monty because he doesn't give him enough praise, which I get that. But you see, nothing means more to anybody and in any work environment or workplace, whatever it is, when you get praise from colleagues, when you get praise from people that do the same thing you do. It's not like your coach giving you praise. Your coach giving you praise is one thing, but if you have another player in the NBA giving you praise, not only that, but a star player, superstar player, to me that holds weight. And it's the confidence booster that Ivy needs right now because he's playing with confidence. The last thing we need is for him to lose confidence the way he's playing. In the offense, kind of they're putting the ball in his hands, letting him run point a little bit. I think it's been great. It's really him and Cade finding a balance, which has been hard because the last two seasons, it's really been no, your turn, right? First season, Cade is running the show. Second season, he's out. Now it's Ivy running the show. Now this season, Cade's a little banged up. Ivy's now running the show. Well, he's back. Now they're gonna have to both balance it. Like it's been 3 seasons with Cade. 2 seasons now with Ivy, but there's still a lot more gelling to do between those guys. That's why I don't like that those guys don't fit. They don't play together. We haven't seen a big enough sample size to even say that, to be honest with you. And we've seen Ivy and him play well together.
Yep.
The wins just haven't been there, but I wouldn't solely blame those two for that anyway.
Well, even this last week was like the first time we actually got to see the starting five that we've talked about pretty much like all off season long. That was, that was Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Bojan Bogdanovic, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren. And when those guys actually got to play together, they were really good. And in fact, over the last couple of weeks, they had that really impressive win last week at home against Oklahoma City, where they pretty much just just from the first quarter on, it was just a boat race. But all into are the wins there? No, absolutely not. Like obviously, like only 6 wins. You can't necessarily say like, oh, this is like a potential dynasty. Not saying that all, but
Yeah.
but it's like there's that like you can see the foundation of what they have is fruitful. Like it can turn around like pretty quickly. Like in the NBA, if like 1 or 2 like upgrades to your roster can significantly change where you are in the standings, especially if you look at if you even look at the standings right now, like the 1st through 5th seed in the East, they're all like within a game and or a half a game of each other.
Yeah,
So,
I would go immediately to a team, at least if you look out west too, while we're on the same topic. I mean, look at Houston. They're almost 500. And all
yep.
they did this offseason, I mean, yeah, you brought in Ime Udoka. He's a great coach, but what'd they do? Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. You bring in veteran presence, right? A veteran presence, and you get a guy who won a championship in Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, vocal leader. Like those two guys, that's the type of impact those guys. And then, of course, Sengun taking a step. He's one of the best young bigs in the league. And that helps, obviously. But in Jabari Smith looking a lot better. But you see what I'm trying to say here is even those two can make an impact. They go from one of the worst teams in the NBA to now almost 500. Like
Yep.
it can happen. It can happen quickly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
I
even
was just going to say to Jeff's point, with bringing in guys like that, it makes your stars or your core better, right? Because a Jalen Green and Alfred Sengun before this season didn't have talent in the past couple of seasons to tag alongside of. So, we knew that those guys were talented. Even this summer, we've talked about those two guys. But now they have talent to pair up. So talent with talent just makes your team better. And yes, we know Cade has talent. We know Ivy has talent. That's not a debate even for a second. But when you bring in talent to go alongside of that talent, it makes their game elevate too. Not just the talent that you bring in, but their game then elevates as well. So there's some fun we can have with those conversations this offseason, I think, too, with who the Pistons would be interested in bringing in.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately, as like it's going to be interesting, just like as the season winds down, just to see like how these guys going to continue to improve, just to see like where they land as far as like record at the end of the season. But I mean, one last thing as far as the trade deadline, we kind of alluded to it a little bit ago. Killian Hayes, for all intents and purposes, first reported by Omari Sankofa. For all intents and purposes, Killian's camp would prefer to be on a new team. And it sounds like the Pistons essentially share that preference for him. Essentially, last week, Killian Hayes was no longer in the rotation, which was something that was kind of writing on the wall for a while now. Killian, despite before the season started, it sounds like reports suggest that Killian was going to be moved in the off season. We remember hearing noise of him potentially being traded, but then Monte came in and said that he wanted, a chance to coach him, which, you don't blame him because again, you talk about what Killian brings, and on paper is like a coach's dream of a type of player to have on your team. But with Killian, it's always been the stuff between the ears. It's never been the physical intangibles. It's always been those little things that have set him apart as far as why he hasn't been able to succeed. And I think ultimately, I'll be interested to see, like where he goes this season. I personally think, San Antonio would still be my pick for him as a fit. But what are your guys' thoughts on, on the Killian Hayes run now that we're pretty much towards the end of it? And do you see a reality where he could potentially still work himself into being in NBA rotations going forward? Or do you think he's probably going to be playing overseas in a couple of years?
I would say sayonara, but Troy, sorry about that.
I was going to say, this past off season and how we started the season, like you mentioned with that comment of Monty Williams, this isn't a major surprise. I don't think. I think the writing's been on the wall for a while. But with that said, I guess I don't know. It would be interesting to see Killian in a different role on a different team. What I mean by that is, what if a contender, one of those 5th or 4th or 3rd seed teams in either conference plays him for 8 or 9 minutes a game and just says, go out there and be a defensive menace. Go out there, guard the other team's best player. Don't shoot unless you're wide open, right? That kind of thing. We don't want you to score the ball. We don't need you to score the ball, but just go out there, play good defense, pass the ball, because we know that we can facilitate pretty well, and just literally play 9 or 10 minutes a night. That would be a very interesting role for me. I would say that would probably be the only role that I think he could succeed at on another roster in the NBA. But if that isn't what's going to happen, yeah, as Jeff said before I cut him off, adios. So
yeah, honestly, I think the tough thing for Killian is that's kind of like in extended minutes, albeit that was kind of his role this season in Detroit, was like, like he was running the point a little bit. He had a little bit more of an extended role maybe than like they were expecting at the beginning of the year. But like, it's not like he was being asked like to do much offensively. And, like, yes, he takes care of the ball. Yes, he's a good playmaker, like yada, yada, yada. You can like, I think his defense is a little overrated just because I think a lot of the Killian supporters try to find those things of, oh, but he's really good, guys. Like I'm telling you. But now that we're at the end of it, I think we can just be honest. It was a miss. I think the Pistons have only been better since, making that decision. And I think they'll only be better if they can potentially get something in return. I expect probably just some 2nd round picks.
And in my opinion, this is about a half a season too late. I think you should have traded Killian last offseason, given how he played the end of the year. And I don't know the influence Monty had, if him having faith in what he could be. Listen, if I'm Troy, there's a reason why, Monty, you're the coach and I'm the GM. Like, you drafted Marcus Sasser, and he's already better than Killian Hayes. He's better offensively. He's got toughness defensively. Like that's and you got him late in the first round. So he's that role. He's playing that role. Now for Killian, this is over. Like, this should have been over. I don't know what they would even get for him now. It'd be scraps, but regardless, you have to trade him. Now, where do I see him fitting? What organization? Spurs make sense, obviously, because given their history with foreign players.
Yep.
But to Troy's point, like, the only situation I see him even being decent in, and listen, I fell for the Killian. I mean, I got a Killian jersey in my closet. We all loved him when he was drafted. It was a miss. We all know that. But the only situation I could see him even being productive, and I'm not saying points, but just to make a rotation, would have to be, he'd have to play for an organization where he's insulated with talent. Like there's talent all around him. And he just, like you said, go out there, play defense, make plays. He doesn't turn the ball over great. You're not asking him to do a lot. That would be, I don't know what situation that is. Maybe in the Spurs, like you said, Sean, he played a similar role here. So what makes you think he's going to go to the Spurs and be any better? They're rebuilding as well.
And
so I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for him. I don't.
You could say, well, put him in the pick and roll with Wemby. You have Greg Popovich, who's a great, who's a great coach, helps, developmental with players, which all of those things are absolutely true. But what I would say to that is, it's not like Detroit has had scrubs in the player development department. If you look at how some of the young players have actually played over the last couple of years. And on top of that, it's not like if he goes to San Antonio, Greg Popovich is going to be telling him anything different than what Dwayne Casey has been telling him or what Monty Williams has been telling him, which is, hey, instead of fading away, go to the basket.
Yeah. It's all English. It's all English at the end of the day. And
some of these veteran coaches, like Popovich was one example. How are they different than Monty Williams or Dwayne Casey, also veteran coaches? So you can't say a better coach when he's been coached by some of the best developmental players in the league.
Mm-hmm. And I do believe there, and this works for some players, that a new situation might benefit them. Right. Mm-hmm. I understand that completely. But where I'm at with Killian, guys, I think Killian, what he is now, is what he'll always be. And that's the truth. I don't think there will be any buyer's remorse, or whatever, seller's remorse, whatever it is, where you trade Killian, you're like, man, if we could, no, there won't be that. I think Killian right now is a final product. He's got all the physical tools, but it's up here. And that's something that it's hard to do. Like if you don't get it, you don't get it. And I don't think he'll ever get it.
Yep.
And he's a great guy, but no, I think he needs a new team. He does.
Yep. I mean, listen, we're 209 games now to the Killian Hayes experience. And through 209 games, he has 8 points a game, 38% from the field overall, 27% from beyond the arc, 5 assists. Cool. Oh, just over a steal a game for someone that we call like a defensive ball hawk, So overall, it could work maybe somewhere potentially, but it's abundantly clear it's not going to be in Detroit. And especially with Marcus Sasser coming in and playing as well as he has, especially with Monte Morris being available, from injury. It just doesn't make sense for him to be on the roster this time next week. It just doesn't.
No, and I'll even add to this too. Like we talked about what could be a good fit for him, but who's to say it would even be a fit for him? Like, let's be real here, guys. This is the deepest the league has ever been. Yep. On top of that, the rules favor the players, offensive players. That's how it is. You see guys every other night, 60 here, 70 there, 50 here, guys scoring at all-time highs. If you can't score at an NBA level, see you later. There's someone else out there that can do it. If you can't shoot 40% from the field and 30% from three at the bare minimum, it's hard to find a roster spot for you in the NBA with how it is now.
And it's not even saying that you have to be this offensive savant that creates their own shot. Like, make a catch and shoot three.
Right. Yeah.
It's that simple. Can you do it or not? And that's going to be the difference between a lot of guys being in the league for 10 plus years or being in Europe within 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean,
and that's why, and that's where players can go to Europe or go overseas, score 50 a night, and regain some confidence. But in the NBA, like, there's no room. If you don't get it now, it goes by quick. Like, once you're moved on, once teams see, okay, well, that he didn't work out there, we don't have a roster spot for him. Like, your career will end very, very quickly if you don't get it. Even though he's a good defender, but teams now, I mean, there's not too many teams that were like, yeah, Killian, we'll take you, even though you're a liability offensively because you can defend. Like, good luck out there. Like,
the only team that's going to take him at this point is one of those teams that are at the bottom of the standings, looking to rebuild and have no incentive, but to just see what they can find. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
you don't think playing 7-8 minutes a night on a Dallas? would do any good for him?
I just don't even see how he would crack 7, 8 minutes a night on Dallas. I mean, maybe I could see some benefit there, but at the same light, I just, they're very much in a win now situation. And, I just don't know, again, I know they're a team that's been listed as like a potential interest. I don't know if, that's just been outside of some flyers, see if they could maybe get someone else packaged with that. Again, I just, I just don't see much of a role for a guy who's, just again, been who he is. Anywhere outside of Detroit, he probably would have been out of the rotation a long time ago.
Yeah, and you're going to just imagine him going to Dallas too, like for a guy that can't play off ball because he can't shoot. You're going to a situation where you have two ball dominant guards. Like you're going to play off Luka. Like he can't even shoot 30% in his career from three. You're going to play off Kyrie, or you're going to play on ball. Well, Luka's playing 38 minutes a night, so it is kind of a weird fit. Like you'd think, Troy, it makes sense. I just don't. Maybe Dallas would be like, you know what, we'll take him. We'll see what he has left in the tank there. But I don't see it. I don't know.
It would be interesting to see how he would respond to having Jason Kidd as his coach. I'll say that much, because you talk about a guy that would not be super conscious of his of Killian's mental. I don't think Jason Kidd would give a if he hurt his feelings, like even a little bit.
Yeah, that is true.
Even a little bit. I know another guy as well, that that's going to be in trade rumors all week as well, as even though he just got back in the lineup, Monte Morris. Apparently, the Minnesota Timberwolves have some form of interest in Monte. Do you guys think that it would make sense to move him if you can get something in return, or do you think that they've waited so long for him to come back in the lineup and to play the role that he has that it doesn't make sense just to trade him a week and a half after coming back? Can you tell what my opinion is?
I was going to say, Sean, you just spoke for me in the second part of that question. I'm with you. I don't think trading Monte Morris should be the move. I mean, he's a guy that, again, this Pistons team is up there in the NBA and turning the ball over, and they're up there in the NBA and not turning the ball over for opposing teams. So you're turning the ball over too much. You're not forcing turnovers, and you have a guy who rarely turns the ball over. And he's a veteran point guard, in which we ask, and I think that's something Monty would love too, to bring in a vet. He's obviously from Michigan, which I don't think that should matter mostly, but it does matter in a way. And I like Monty. He's a good backup point guard. Honestly, guys, I wouldn't even hate if they extended Monty. I wouldn't hate it at all. And I think he'd be affordable. I think he, again, can shoot the three, he could play off ball. He's good. He could score the basketball. He barely turns the ball over. There's a lot to like. Like, yeah, it makes sense why the Timberwolves would want him despite not him playing most of the season. So no, I don't. If I had an option there, I would say no. I don't think the return on Monty would be worth trading him. I think he provides a lot of value.
And we need talent, right? We need guys who can go out there and give you a good 20, 30 minutes a night of high volume offense, being able to score the ball, facilitate the ball, but also make your core better. And Monte Morris does that with, I feel like Cade and Ivy can do improvements just with him in that locker room, him at practice, but him on the court together as well. When we're in so desperate need for talent and just to get wins, it makes no sense, but especially makes no sense when he's only played just maybe 5 games now. So,
yep, 100%. And even then, like he's only been like, he's pretty much been on a minutes restriction. Like since coming back, he hasn't played over 16 minutes in a game. He's pretty much averaging like 11 minutes. So, just seeing where he can get overall and like the grand scheme, like overall, and how he can continue to like just be implemented into the lineup and get more playing time, I can just only see that being more of a positive impact on the team.
Yeah, I think again, like, although the bench has been a little weird because you're playing like 6 guys, 7 guys off your bench. Monte to me is a guy that you want to keep in the rotation. And again, the shooting, like he's shooting over under 40% from the field, but that's just, I mean, he's coming off an injury. So like, we know what Monte is for the most part. He's a 45-40 guy. That's his efficiency typically every single year. And you don't turn the ball over. We got young guards. Monte's a good vet guy. Guys like him. Like, it doesn't surprise me that teams want him, and that should be a good thing. Like, teams want a guy, and he's only 28. Well, how old is he? 28 years old?
29, I think.
Yeah, like that. He's not old. Yeah, like I wouldn't trade him, and that's just me.
Yeah, 100%. And again, especially with how, how much he clearly was, like meant to play a role this year, and with how much, already he's just brought some positive, like energy and momentum to the team. And it's like obviously it doesn't matter that he's from the city, but it does matter that, that he cares about, Detroit, and cares about playing for the Pistons, like what that means. Like that's not nothing, especially when like you talk about the potential of bringing a guy back and someone that can be instrumental. Like we talk about like what types of players Detroit needs. Like Monte Morris is the mold of what Detroit needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I personally just don't think it makes a lot of sense either. One last thing before we go, just talking trade deadline, just the rest of the league.
Yeah,
The Lakers. What do you guys think they could possibly be doing? Because LeBron James last week he tweeted out that cryptic emoji, which LeBron being LeBron, having to bring the attention back to himself, and make it clear, I'm not happy. We need to make a move in now. Like that, like that's just how I read that. It's like come on, man. I just LeBron's something else. But reports suggest DeJounte Murray is a guy they like. Apparently, they've called Detroit apparently about Danilo Gallinari. Apparently, they also really like Bruce Brown as well. Can we just admit this Lakers team's just not that good?
absolutely.
Can we just say it? Like what? Like who are they going to bring in that's going to change this team's fortunes?
Well, we still don't really even know who's the franchise based around him, right? I mean, we've been having this debate for 3 years now. Is it AD or is it LeBron? Is it AD or is it LeBron? And I feel like with AD maybe a little more available this year than he was last. It's so hard to know what you need for him to put around him. Of course, LeBron always needs shooters, but you have a guy like Vanderbilt too that plays good D, but I don't know what you're going to get for him if you wanted to get him. Russell's had a couple of good games this past 2 or 3 weeks. Not sure his value. Not sure if you want to keep him because he has been playing somewhat well the past couple of weeks. I don't know, Sean. I really don't know what moves this team wants to make and who they want to base it around.
Yeah, they're stuck. I think the biggest mistake that set this franchise back, two things. One, betting that Anthony Davis would actually be the franchise player, the passing the torch that they thought was going to happen. The other thing was trading for Russell Westbrook. That, and we knew it wouldn't be a great fit anyway, but that set them back because they again, LeBron's getting older. He's playing great, which, it's to no one's surprise. He's playing at a high level, but I think in their minds, they figured if we got a star next to AD and LeBron can kind of be your third option, he doesn't have to play as many minutes, but he can, it'd be a big three. They botched that with getting Russell. And I like Russell. He's coming off the bench for LA. Like he's fine, but I think they overrated what he could be for the Lakers. And that really screwed him as well. So, DeJounte Murray, it makes sense, right? You bring in another star, you have AD and DeJounte, and then of course LeBron can chill and just do his thing, get you 28 and 8 a year. But they're not great. And I don't even know if DeJounte, I mean, you got LeBron in the postseason, but they might not be just a move away. Like they might be a move away from a move, if that makes sense.
Who do you throw in there? You throw Russell, you throw Vanderbilt and Prince. I mean, who do you throw in to get Atlanta?
Well, even then,
in a 2030 pick? I mean, what are we
can't throw
doing?
Vanderbilt anymore. He's out for the rest of the season.
Oh, that's right.
And even then, he was their best defensive like perimeter defender. Like outside of Anthony Davis, like he was like probably like their best defensive player. And it's like, listen, for all intents and purposes, I like DeJounte Murray, but like, how would that not just be Russell Westbrook 2 Electric Boogaloo? Like it's not like DeJounte Murray's like this Stephen Curry like 3-point shooter. He's and listen, Russell Westbrook, I actually really like what he's doing on the Clippers. I think the player he is on the Clippers is who the Lakers ultimately needed Russ to be, and he couldn't become that until he went through what he went through with the Lakers. But in the same light, it's like I just don't see really you look at why they're where they're at. All these role players that they thought were incredible, all these guys that they signed in free agency where it's like, oh, Gabe Vincent, he's awesome. He was awesome for a month. He hasn't played yet. And they gave him $13 million a year.
Jackson Hayes, another one. Where's he been? He's been a little bit, but not much.
Rob Pelinka, I mean, no wonder
He has
LeBron's sending
gotten
out cryptic tweets. I mean, you got wearing the New York towel, the Knicks towel around his neck, walking out of the arena. Like, I don't know. And I know LeBron, typically in LeBron fashion, he's putting pressure on the organization. But Sean, I don't know what move they can even do to turn this team into a legitimate contender, especially in the West. I don't know.
I'm just going to say it now. I think last year's Western Conference Finals run, despite the talent that they have on the team, was one of the flukiest conference finals runs we've seen in the last decade. I would say the two flukiest playoff runs I've seen in my lifetime were the Atlanta Hawks that got to the conference finals a couple years ago against Milwaukee when it was the Ben Simmons collapse in the second round.
Yeah.
And then it has to be this Lakers team, right? Because they got in through the play-in tournament. I believe they played the Warriors in the first round, who were was it the second round, or did they play Memphis the first round?
Memphis the first round.
That's right. Okay. Yep. So they played Memphis the first round, who were already beaten and decrepit, and Ja Morant was pretty much like in and out of the series, and even like by the end of the series, he wasn't like really able to play. They blew the living crap out of them. And then you look at the Warriors series where they were just a shell of themselves. They were clearly not the team that won the title the year before. And then they were so outmatched against Denver. It was nuts.
Swept. Absolutely swept.
And listen, Jeff, I know at the time, I know you liked him, but like looking back, it's like the question about that team was, if those guys can keep up that play, this could be a legit team. The only role player that kept up that play was Jared Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even one of the guys that was playing well for them during the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and you're right. As the years go on, they have LeBron excuse is slowly just fusing out. Like every year that goes by, although he's playing great, like it's less and less likely that LeBron can catapult this team. Like, yeah, they went to the Western Conference Finals. He was playing really well. AD, even though he's, every other game AD, and he was playing well one game and not well the other game. Unless they go get somebody that can be who is a superstar or a damn good star, like they're screwed. Like I think counting on LeBron to carry you in the postseason, because AD ain't going to do it, is a recipe for disaster, quite frankly.
Yep. 100%.
That's a first round exit right there.
And this is like, and this is like coming from a year where Anthony Davis is probably having his best individual season as a Laker. Like, I think that's pretty fair to say. Like, he's definitely the healthiest he's been.
Right. He's on the court the most, right?
He's played 47 games thus far. He's only 9 away from matching his total from last year. He's already exceeded the play total of the 2 seasons before that. Just to tell you how unavailable he's been. And the conversation with the Lakers has always been, oh, well, if they're healthy, they're going to be one of the... No. They are healthy. They suck. That's it. As simple as that.
That's it. That's all.
Yep.
That's right. I was going to add another name. I don't know how available he is, but I thought I saw some rumors. Dinwiddie. I don't know if the Lakers would be pushing for him, but if it's not the Lakers, could you see him being dealt by Thursday?
Yeah, so I definitely think he's one of the more likely names to be dealt from Brooklyn. I know there was kind of like some of that, like kind of some of that noise and some of the rumors about, like him being available. As far as teams and where he can go, I'm just not quite sure, to be honest with you. I could maybe see one potential deal off the top of my head that might be interesting is like some form of exchange with Washington, where maybe where maybe the Wizards can give them like Tyus Jones in exchange, and Dinwiddie can just be like an expiring contract, but that'd kind of be ironic since he was already on the Wizards.
Right. And it's the second sim at the Nets too.
Yep, 100%. But it's just Spencer Dinwiddie's just, he at this point he's just a journeyman. It's like he's not quite good enough to justify a long-term spot somewhere, but he's good enough to, to get him in the rotation if you need improvement, right? So, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't think of, like maybe Minnesota. I know they're looking for like another veteran ball handler. Like maybe he'd be an interesting backup point guard for them. But like other than that, I just, Spencer Dinwiddie's not on the top of my on my radar of players to watch this week. I am interested though, just to see teams like I'm interested to see like what the Bucks do, because I know that they're going to try to be super aggressive. I'm interested to see like what they do and also like what Boston does, because like I think we've seen a lot over the last couple of weeks. A lot of the teams that have won the championship really, for all intents and purposes, made that happen through a deal that happened during the trade deadline. Even Denver, they got Aaron Gordon during the trade deadline a couple years ago.
Yep.
And that was like what made them what they are now.
Right. So with that, Sean, I do have to ask, what is the craziest, boldest prediction that you feel comfortable sharing on the air? Do you have any?
Oh man. I guess what I'll say is I think LeBron, here's what I'll say. I think this trade deadline is going to be the beginning of the end of LeBron as a Laker. I think he's going to be not happy with whatever they do, and I think he's going to try to either request a trade or potentially move on in free agency in some form. I think this is the beginning of the end of the LeBron Laker era. There's my bold take.
Wow, that is bold. You got any, Jeff?
You put me on the spot. I'm like, all right, you want me to be bold?
I think you do better. Sean, you do better than me under the spot with this type of stuff like that. I got nothing, to be honest with you. I don't. Anything you got, Troy? Honestly, I don't have anything.
I guess I don't know who, but I could see Milwaukee trying to do something just to potentially gamble to get them have a better roster than Boston, because I think right now it's a gamble of, Boston, Milwaukee, who has the better long-term roster to take them into a deep playoff run, or at least get them over the Eastern Conference Finals hump into the finals. Philly might be another one. I guess I don't really know what moves either would make, but I could
honestly, like with
potential
Philly
being
too.
wow.
Yeah, like the other thing with Philly too is like, do they make a move at this point? Because Joel Embiid now, like they are being very careful about the wording around his injury. He's having surgery. He's having knee surgery, and could potentially come back at some point this season. He could potentially miss the rest of the season. And so maybe you make a trade to try to still make them competitive and viable, and maybe have someone that can help if Embiid can come back. But do you give up long-term assets on the chance that Joel Embiid comes back this season? Because this is the same knee injury he's been dealing with his entire career.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Did you see how they worded it too? It was like repair versus surgery, like everything.
Yep.
That
like they're even careful to say the word procedure. It's like, no, it's surgery.
Yeah.
It's surgery. What are there are two phrases I feel like we have coined on this podcast. One of them, basketball isn't played on paper. The other, there's no such thing as a non-invasive surgery. That is an oxymoron. The meaning of surgery is going in your body. Like, that's what it is.
Yep. It's like if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's most likely a duck.
Exactly.
That's what this is.
Oh, what a beautiful swan.
Yeah.
All right. This was the last thing I promised. Real quick. Did you see what the Bulls asking price is for Alex Caruso?
Pretty high, wasn't it? It was like unrealistically high.
The quote I saw was they want an OG Anunoby haul.
Yeah. What?
Alex Caruso. The Bulls are somehow still number one in attendance in the NBA. These poor fans have, like, the Pistons have been bad for a while. I acknowledge that. But the Bulls, ever since Jordan left, have just been a level of inept that I just can't comprehend, guys. Alex Caruso's great. You're not getting RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and picks level for Alex Caruso.
Like, how is it that fans like us can so easily pick that apart? But like actual GMs are like, no, man, I'm serious. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I get it. Chicago's been better, like, and I know that they don't, like, they have a hard time of saying, oh, we're rebuilding, but it's like, what? What am I missing here?
Yeah, I don't unless I mean, shit. I don't. I don't. Maybe he's just he's gritty. You know, he's the type of guy you want your daughter to date. He's first one in, last one out. All the cliches they say about white guys, I guess that's what he qualifies for. I don't know because he's giving you what 10 points a game. You're asking for a OG Anunoby trade. I mean, what? That sounds like, oh well, we can't get as much as we wanted for Zach LaVine, so here's Alex Caruso.
Yeah,
that is exactly it. That is exactly it. That is a team. That is a team that a few months ago said, "Oh well, at least we can trade Zach LaVine," and now they're a team that can say, "Can I interest you in a Alex Caruso for everything that you own?" Thoughts?
Thoughts? Yeah, that's what it is, man.
What about Vooch? Yeah. They don't want to part ways with him yet?
I mean, who wants that contract?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like Drummond genuinely has more trade value right now than Nikola Vucevic.
It's pretty sad.
Fair.
Especially when the guy that they essentially traded for to get him dropped 38 in Detroit the other day. So
right, because that was their pick. That fifth pick, bronze. Yeah.
Yep. So it's one of those.
I can't believe that. I still can't believe that.
The Bulls are like an onion. The more you peel it back, the more it stinks and makes your eyes water. You know.
That's a bar. Oh, I'm taking that. I'm writing that down.
I thought of that earlier today, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good." I'm gonna use that on the pod.
A+. That's A+.
I thought it was pretty good.
Gotta use that one more often, Sean.
Yeah, that's a damn. I'm stealing that for crunch time. I'm stealing that one.
Heck yeah. I better get some for a shout out. But anyway, guys, I said this before the pod. It's just always super fun to we were literally talking for almost 20 minutes before the pod. And I forgot to hit record because I'm like, it's just good to talk to my guys. I just want to pinch their little chubby cheeks like they're my sons. I'm just so proud of how you did on your report card. But anyway, this has been another episode of From Half Court. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you like it, be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out what these guys are up to as well. Most importantly, be sure you go subscribe and support Crunch Time with Jeff live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. But boys, girls, people around the world, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.